You're listening to Win-Win, an entrepreneurial community with your host, Ben Wilke.
And welcome to the Win-Win podcast. This is Ben Wilke, as always, your host. We're going to learn from our guest today a blueprint for incorporating and integrating AI into your business. With that, I want to introduce this guest. He is the founder and leader of multiple SaaS companies. He serves as a chief product officer and AI implementation consultant for his clients. His name is Chris Wilke. You can learn more about him at chriswilke.net. That's Wilke. Chris, am I pronouncing your last name correctly? I probably
nailed it.
Okay, I should have confirmed that in advance. But all right, I'm glad to hear that. Welcome to the show. I appreciate you making the time to talk.
Thank you for having me. This is great to be here.
Awesome. Yes, definitely appreciate it. And I guess I want to start off by asking you the question I ask everybody, which is please give us a quick 2-minute background to help us get a little context for where you came from and how you came to be talking about what we're talking about today.
Well, I was a computer engineering major at Texas A&M University. That was when the birth of the internet happened with the web browser, 1993. Saw the web browser, called my brother. We started a life science clinical information tracking company, did that for 17 years, was acquired by a competitor in 2006, and then served as the chief technology officer for that company for about 3.5 years. So then I've done enterprise software my whole life, love software, love people, love scaling businesses. And then, when I saw ChatGPT in November of 2022, it was that same web browser feeling that, okay, we've got a new platform. And that's so ever since then, I've directed myself headfirst into that.
Super helpful. Now, I know myself running a business and our clients at Wolf's Edge Integrators, fractional chief operating officers with our clients' businesses, everybody's so busy. Everybody's got a lot going on between running their business and putting out fires, and for the best of us, making time to qualitatively improve our business and move the ball forward, not just on running the day to day and then putting out fires, but in moving the ball forward in the business to get it where we want it to go. It's just very busy, but yet obviously all of us are surrounded all the time now by all this buzz about AI, ChatGPT and Bard and all these things and all these tools out there. And it's just it feels to me, I'm a Gen Xer, I'm not that far away from 50, and it's just to learn this whole, it just feels like this whole new thing overwhelming to learn, and how would I make use of it, or I get my people to make use of it, or it's a tool even,
Right.
Is that even going to get me towards my goals? But there's just little time to invest into it. So I guess to understand how AI tools might be able to make a practical difference, like in real small and mid-sized businesses, before you share this 7-stage framework that you're going to be teaching us today on how to integrate AI into a business, can you just share some stories and examples, like use cases where of how either you've used AI in your own business or clients' businesses or other people that you're aware of how they've used it in their own small and mid-sized businesses?
Right. Yes. So, one of the terms I like to use, you hear artificial intelligence a lot, and I actually like the term augmented intelligence. So it's really giving people a tool to operate faster. So, in 2022, when the market turned, a lot of companies were looking to really focus on free cash flow. The private equity markets kind of shifted a little bit. There were a lot of layoffs. And so we were working with one company, and a lot of their sales operations team got laid off. Well, in the enterprise software space, you have to complete RFPs or requests for proposals. So now the sales ops team's decimated. You still have to drive top line revenue. So how do you get all these RFPs completed? Well, so we used AI to help out with that, where you go prime it, with information about the company. You load in the questions, and then you start spitting out the answers. So we were actually able to help them produce the RFPs 84% faster. And the chief revenue officer of that company actually said the quality of the deliverable was higher than what the sales ops team was doing previously. So just with a little bit of
that is
priming,
a crazy example.
Yeah.
I'll just share a personal story. Is like a few years ago, maybe sometime in 2019, I got hired by a former company I was in to write the first draft of an RFP, and they only had 30 days to do the whole thing for a government contract.
You had 30 days. That's amazing.
Yeah, I think we had 30 days, I believe. And it was like this massive thing.
Yeah.
And we had 30 days to do it. And there was nobody within the organization with the bandwidth or the institutional knowledge that like what I had from my previous time there. So they paid me an obscene amount of money to not have much sleep for a few weeks, right? Writing the right, so I just think the time that I put in and the long nights working on this thing, at least just for the first draft. And then they had a professional RFP company, but again, they couldn't do it in that time frame without somebody like giving them a jump start. So I was their Chat GPT. I was a very expensive Chat GPT for them to give them that first draft, but just amazing. Okay, that's a really interesting case.
Well, that's kind of the second thing where I'm seeing companies, smaller companies that have these domain experts, and they've got 10, 15, 20 years of expertise, and they are typically the bottleneck. So what you can do is like grab all of their blog posts, grab their podcast content, convert that to transcripts. And then, so we're helping people kind of start to codify their domain experts. So then you can talk to Ben Wolf inside your organization, without Ben Wolf being awake. Right. So that's the other use case that we're seeing kind of,
create virtual versions of people that you could
virtual
text questions to.
Yes. That kind of responds and communicates that same way. So
dang,
pretty fascinating.
Fascinating. Also scary.
Yeah.
But
it's a little scary.
And maybe one more example or story you could share.
So I was working with a friend of mine who's a chief information security officer for a company. And so he was helping consult on how they can adopt, let's say, ISO, 27000, basically 27001. And so
that's a security protocol
it's an ISO security guidance. So what you want to do is like, okay, how do I create my policies according to that? So it's amazing. You go into ChatGPT, take the role of a chief information security officer. Are you familiar with ISO, 27001? Yes, certainly. Yes, it knows everything about it. Outline my policy, write my 180-day plan for adoption. What are the risks? What should I be thinking about? What types of roles do I need inside my business to define this? Write the job description of those roles. So really you can get a whole 180-day plan with the staffing, the job descriptions, and everything in hours versus weeks. And is it perfect? No. But is it really good? Yeah, it's really good. And so you do have to, I always caution people, you do not take this as a black box and just throw it over the fence. You've got to go review it. You've got to put the safeguards in place, make sure it's not hallucinating or just making stuff up, but it does absolutely accelerate your work.
Right. What you're saying about augmented intelligence reminds me of that quote, I think from a famous tweet by, I think it was Mark Andreessen, who talked about how AI is just, could just, make coders 10 times more productive, make this, make that, just all kinds of people can, just like the use of machines can make people more productive, 100, 200 years ago, the AI could just, multiply rather than destroying, or taking away human jobs, let's say, can just make people or businesses, 5, 10 times more productive.
Yeah, that's right. And there will be some displacement, right? So The common example is if you had agriculture and you had 10 people plowing the field, and then you get a tractor and you need one person to plow the field. Well, there are some people that no longer plow the field, but they are packaging the goods. They're creating shipping companies. They're broadening the distribution of how you sell that. They're focusing on the marketing. And so it's a win. It is a win-win at the end of the day, but we have to be mindful of that transition.
Yeah. Right. 100%. Now, would you mind teaching us about the 7-stage framework you developed for integrating AI? Tell us about that.
So when I started working on this myself, I'm like, okay, how am I going to attack this problem, right? Because it's a great opportunity, but it also creates risk for the business. And so I just sat down and started mapping out, how am I going to do this within my businesses? And really, our 7 steps are: educate, go get educated on what's out there. What are the building blocks? Then go define where you can use this. So you can't circumvent good business practice, which is, what is my market problem and who am I serving? And so you have to define what is it you're trying to solve, and then just go match the tools. So educate and define. Then my recommendation is, don't go spend a ton of money on this. We're all running businesses. I'm a huge fan of traction and that process. So we have to get a return on the money we're putting in. So go run a pilot. So that's the next step, is pilot this, do a small baby step, then evaluate it. You got to have a metric, like what does it mean to win? And then if you're winning and it's returning, then you go operationalize it, put it into your processes, scale it out to the teams. And because it is a new technology, you've got to govern it, right? So you have to have some kind of governance policy to manage what's called like drift in the models, where make sure it's still operating properly. And of course, there's an ethical component as well that you need to make sure that you're educating your teams on and using it for good and not bad.
Right. So when you create a virtual version of your domain expert, that you don't have him like prank calling his his wife or something in the middle of the night with an AI version of him.
Exactly. That's right. So these are what common sense things, but we need to say them out loud sometimes. That's right.
Right. And so we'll share these 7 things in the episode description. But let me ask you, if we could take a deep dive into one of them, right? Obviously, there's no time. I'm sure there's a whole universe we could go into for each and every one of the 7 stages. But if you could take us on a deep dive and an example on one of those things that you think will be most useful for people.
Okay. Usually I start with the education component, and what I'll lead with is that almost every part of global GDP is up for disruption, right? So we're not going to be fearful of that. We're not going to live in fear, but we do have to recognize that things are changing with a new technology. So if we think about major technology shifts in the last 50 years, we have microprocessor in 1971, right? Apple, Microsoft, Dell, rebirth of IBM, all of those companies came from that, and they dominated the business landscape for 30 years. Well, then, of course, Mark Andreessen releases the Mosaic web browser in 1993. And from that, we got the software as a service industry. Companies like Amazon, eBay emerge, and really the way that we work and learn and communicate and shop is completely different today. Then in 2007, Apple gives us the iPhone and mobile computing, and you've got the mobile app industry, and that is still booming and growing 16 years later. And of course, generative AI became accessible to us through ChatGPT. It became visible to millions of people, and that's a whole new platform.
So that's on the level. This is on the level of the microprocessor and those other things that you mentioned.
That's my belief. I think this will be AI in general, all encompassing, really one of the most powerful platforms we've seen. And a lot of the writing that I look at, it's on par with electricity. It's going to spawn off a lot of different new things where, human productivity will, I think, shift, because we're at the infancy, right? It's funny. I chuckle sometimes. You see these, posts and they're like, oh, that image it created wasn't that great. I'm like, well, it's it's like 45 seconds old, right? It's going to get better. So people are going to solve those problems. So, that's kind of the first thing. And then it's really understanding the building blocks inside of generative AI specifically, because companies like Amazon and Facebook and Walmart have been doing AI for a long time, and they could invest into the PhDs and the machine learning and the compute power. But what's really different now is the accessibility for everyday businesses. A common day developer can just plug into these large language models like a ChatGPT, like a Claude 2, and leverage that. So that just gives creativity a whole new level. And there's really 4 types of components. So you've got the text component, which millions of people are familiar with. You walk up to ChatGPT, you put in your text, you get text out. But you can also do audio, and of course images, and then video. And so then you can start to really chain those together in creative ways. And likewise, you can go backwards with all that. So I can take audio and turn it back into text. And so it really gives you a broad way to communicate and market and get creative in how you can change how your business is running.
Right. You have a video on your website of like you saying something that's not really you. It was a picture that was taken and text put in, and used a sample of your voice, and made a brief video of you. You're standing very still, more still than a regular person would stand. But
all right.
But
for 10 seconds worth of work, it's not bad, right? And
right.
There's an example I'll use sometimes. There's Building a Story Brand by Donald Miller. It's a popular book for marketing frameworks. And so, he's got the concept of a one-liner. And so, you can go into ChatGPT, help, write your one-liner, but then I was able to convert that to audio. So now you've got somebody reading it. But then if I'm doing an engagement, let's say in the UK, I can have it read as a BBC female narrator. And then I can create an image of somebody in Midjourney, and then use DID Studio to then take the image that's fake, the audio that was then generated from text from ChatGPT, chain all that together, and then I've got a video of a news anchor giving my one-liner in the UK. And all that can be done for like $30.
Right. Wow. That's what's DID?
So it's called D-ID Studio. You can Google that one. And it allows you to upload a still picture and create a video from the still picture, or they have avatars, and then you can overlay an audio file or do text prompting. So, I can, I will use something like 11 Labs. That's an audio application. It takes text, turns it to audio. There's another one called play.ht, which is good as well. And so I use that to generate audio, and then I can feed that into the video.
Wow. I mean, the way you described how it's sort of democratized it, that for decades, some companies have had AI and machine learning, but, just reminds me how also for decades, there was programs like SAP and just sort of these massive ERPs that could only exist at the, super enterprise level,
right.
Cost millions of dollars, and only super enterprise companies could really make use of them. But nowadays, we have Zoho and HubSpot and even Salesforce, which is very expensive, but relative to those other things, Salesforce, HubSpot, Zoho, and a number of others, just sort of democratize the ability to systemize and processize and project manage, and just tools that only giant companies had access to, a few years ago. I mean, now every small business has these tools, and it's sort of just what you said about, the fact that you can get for $30 this and $10 that and $20 that per month, and chain together this set of AI tools that can do remarkable things and create remarkable productivity for, just a few dozen dollars a month, is just, kind of reminds me of that sort of revolution for small businesses.
Yeah, it's an exciting time to be a small business or entrepreneur. And it is, you can have a small crackerjack team and really operate at scale. It takes money to tie it all together, but the tools will get easier and easier. I mean, I remember in the old days of the web, and like businesses actually asked themselves the question, should I have a website or not? Right. Well, then it became, yeah, I've got to have a website. So how do I get one? So now you're paying people to build the HTML and
Right.
the CSS. And now you go to any number of point and click, and it's a beautiful website.
Squarespace and Wix and
yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it's $30 a month, and it's fantastic. And
Right.
so
Go ahead.
well, yeah. So our, AI is going to permeate into, all of those tools and start to plug in everywhere.
What is gonna, for those that are overwhelmed and just say, okay, I don't have time to look into this right now. I don't have time to look into this right now. What's going to happen for people who just sort of ignore this and don't do anything?
Yeah, if in the short term you're going to be okay, in the long term you're going to have to adapt. All right, and so if we go back to that web example. I mean, I remember vividly in the mid 90s, 1995, talking to people about websites on their, you're a car dealership. You can put all your cars on the internet, and people thought that was crazy. So in the short term, will it impact you? No. In the coming 12, 18, 24 months, will you start to be overtaken by competitors that are leveraging it? I think so. So it is one of those shifts where you've got to start understanding what it is. And if you choose not to use it, that's okay, but understand, right, how other people might to get that 10x productivity that you're not obtaining, right? So it'll become like the internet, right? Everybody's got it. You got, everybody's connected. So people will have to evolve, in my opinion.
Right. Very interesting. Can you take us out with another example, another story? Again, like thinking about smaller, mid-sized businesses. What's another way that people have used ChatGPT AI tool or AI tools?
Yeah. So if you think about, let's say the accountability chart in EOS, and we've got sales, we've got operations, we've got finance. So there's a great paper by McKinsey and Company, and they estimated on the high end a $4.4 trillion annual impact coming from generative AI. And in there, they have this little matrix of, here's what they believe is the 75% of that value, and here's the cost to go capture it. So it's kind of one of those magic quadrant type things. So sales and marketing is what I would classify as low-hanging fruit. This is content generation, image generation, things that are relatively inexpensive to do that you can take advantage of immediately by walking up to a ChatGPT or a Claude 2, or like using a SaaS tool like Jasper AI. There's a lot of those tools out there. So sales and marketing for sure. We'd helped the company with their email sequencing. So the chief revenue officer at that company, really good at the messaging and the framework of how he did his email sequencing and phone calls and overlay with LinkedIn. But he wanted to personalize that. So we just set up the chain, and then the AI knows everything about their company. And then you just feed it a little bit of information about the prospect, and it goes and it generates the, 7, 8, 9 emails perfectly customized to that customer's prospect. Yeah. So sales and marketing for sure. If you think about operations, me coming from the software side, having it would write my lean business cases to help me assess if I should go into a market. There's a really good trick inside ChatGPT. There's what's called one-shot learning, where you can give it like one example of anything, like a document, an email, a feature, and it will try to replicate that. But what I found to be really effective is a template. So, in my world, I have a feature template. And, what is the name of the feature? What is the description? What's the benefit hypothesis? What's the acceptance criteria to put it into your software? From that template, I'm like, okay, now generate the top 10 features for the software product that I'm building. Give me the titles. Now go elaborate my feature using my template. And that's really effective. So if you've got a process and you've got templates inside your business, and you're having to generate new content according to those templates, it'll crush that.
Right. Well, that's awesome. I appreciate you opening my eyes, and I know we've had previous conversations, and I appreciate all the education and the help that uh, that you have given me in trying to understand this space better, which I'm not a very tech oriented person, so greatly appreciate. And I appreciate making the time to share everything you did today, these stories, these use cases. Hopefully people can understand better how it might apply to their business and how important it is that, not using AI, in a couple of years will be like somebody today saying, oh, I don't want to use the internet.
Right.
That it's,
Right.
it's just going to be a tool that's everyone's using, and, it will not be able to compete with other people ultimately without in the marketplace without figuring out how to utilize it, which is super interesting. I'll just say one annoying thing. There's just one guy on some of these podcasts. There's an annoying person who always posts these formulaic responses like, "Oh, I love how you said this. What have you found about that?" or whatever, some related thing. And it's just always exactly the same formula. And I just realized after a couple of times, like, all right, this is an NPC. This is an AI bot that this guy has
Yeah.
responding to people's social media. It just annoyed me.
Yeah. You have to watch out for the repetitive bot type stuff. And, and then just a word of caution, right? I've got 4 young kids. My parents are in their 80s. And so it is so easy for people to create fake content, fake personas. So I'm not
Right.
afraid of all this stuff, but you should be wise, be educated,
Right.
on how you manage it. So on one level, it's super annoying. And then on the other level, you gotta watch out for the bad actors.
Yeah, I appreciate it. And thinking about kids, I think it's a whole nother topic. Thinking about kids and how, good writers, or let's say good software developers, are able to use AI to 10x their productivity.
Yeah.
But if I'm a young kid and I have never learned how to be a software developer, and then I use it to develop software, and then because of the availability of AI, I never developed the skills
Yeah.
about how to develop software. I mean, I don't know who's gonna run it in the future. We're just gonna have to make the computers create all the software, and then we sort of invite the sort of our robot overlords. I don't know, just because we are completely incompetent in an idiocracy style. I don't know. This is we don't need to get into it, but it's just another area to explore when when you think about this, and especially with kids,
Yeah.
or even college students, just even people learning the skills of life, or is learning how to code, is that going to be like learning how to fix horseshoes? Like it's, like, I don't know. Anyway, so
Yeah, it's fascinating. So I always go back to the basics. People, relationships, values. These are anchors that are timeless, regardless of technology. Critical thinking, freedom of speech. These are things. Those are the things that we need to be focusing on, in my opinion, and protecting. The rest typically will work itself out. So, but yeah, you can't bypass those critical thinking skills for sure.
yeah.
I do always wonder. I'm like, okay, what if Thomas Edison had this technology back? Somebody that's just a relentless pursuing invention and understanding.
Yeah, he could. I don't know. We would have flying cars now. Like if
So I think people, you just can't squelch human curiosity, and I think human curiosity plus this is going to create a lot of wonderful things for society.
All right. Very fascinating. I appreciate you sharing. Again, people can learn more about Chris Wilke at chriswilke.net, WILKE, chriswilke.net. You can learn more about his work, seek out his help in your own AI implementation, or, view some of the resources on his website. And I appreciate you picking the time, Chris. Thank you.
Thanks so much, Ben, for having me, and we'll see you soon.
Thank you so much. And everybody else, we'll see you on the other side.
You're listening to Win-Win, an entrepreneurial community with your host, Ben Wolfe.